Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Parent, and I am the CEO of Port Square Group. We are a managed service firm managing IT infrastructure for life science companies. And this podcast is the Driving the Business of Science podcast. What I tried to do here is over the point of time, since we do work with a lot of life science companies, I meet a lot of very interesting people that do a lot of different things within the life science world. And what I want to do is bring those people to talk to you and just tell you about things that they're working on, how they're working either with the sponsor level or the CRO level, or maybe CDMO or global laboratory. They're all over the place. So, and today we have um, a great person on hand today, Kristin Seastrand, who's working at Siemens. I'll have her give you her full background with her title and everything. But so, Kristin, I'm going to turn it over to you in a minute. But let me talk about Port Square. First of all, I'm going to say we are a managed service firm managing IT infrastructure for life science companies, but we also have what's called RegDocs 365, which is a content repository for any type of clinical or regulatory content. And we have added an AI engine to be able to look at the content lock within a lot of those documents. So if that's anything anybody out there is looking to do, we're here. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristin, and Kristin can give us some of her background. Kristin.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you for having me today. I've been working in the life sciences segment for over 25 years in IoT enablement, platform modernization, in the sales and product marketing and project management capacities. And it's really, this is the most exciting time I've seen in life sciences. So happy to be here.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about your role at Siemens and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so at Siemens, I'm in the sales organization, and I'm in a part of the Siemens business called Digital Industries Software. And a lot of people don't know that this exists. So I work with a variety of levels of people at life sciences companies to help them figure out what they want to do in their next phases of digital transformation. And right now, of course, heavily focused on AI and how people are going to use AI to improve efficiencies and create drugs for patients faster, as well as medical device equipment and how they might accelerate their development.
Great. Now you've been at Siemens for 6 years or so. Is that what
Six
you said?
years. Yep.
Excellent. And
Yes.
now what were you doing prior to when I first got to meet with you?
Yeah. So prior to Siemens, I was in um, mostly I did IoT enablement as well as building enablement for laboratories.
Oh, that's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah. So digital twin technology. Yep. That and material testing.
Okay. So I met Kristin when we were working with another company called Altair, which was a company that had a SAS compiler. Siemens bought Altair, and all of a sudden we became a Siemens partner as opposed to an Altair partner. And actually, from a life sciences perspective, Siemens has a big name here in the United States. They're known for a lot of different products, and having that name, they're also on a lot of approved vendor lists with some of the bigger pharma companies. So I think there's some credence now to what Altair could potentially do, or what now the SLC, which stands for SAS Language Compiler, can do with that. Can you talk a little bit about that and bringing on new products, Kristin, and how you deal with those kind of things? Is it the same kind of audience you were working with before, or is it a different audience? Tell me a little bit about that.
Uh, yeah, so the audience shifts depending upon, the type of organization they are and what they're trying to do. So I do talk with people in all parts of the organization. If a company is heavily in manufacturing, for example, they might have different goals to drive. The thing that came about with the acquisition of Altair is probably a much higher level in organizations because they're looking at this as something that's going to allow them to have a much more flexible infrastructure and something that will set them up to future-proof their tech stack. And they want to make sure that they can take advantage of AI capabilities that are happening, but also do that within regulatory, right? They absolutely have to have safeguards in place that allow them to continue to be compliant. So this is increasing the level of in an organization that I speak to on a frequent basis because they want to make sure that they have a handle on these kinds of changes.
Great. And I think one of the reasons that we got involved with Kristin was because because we offer an audit-ready compliant cloud environment, we can actually host and manage that SLC compiler. A lot of customers, the first step is to figure out, can all your SaaS code run through that compiler? So the first thing we do is we can actually run a tool that will actually look at all your SaaS code and put that in there and tell you how much, typically 95% or higher of your SaaS code will run right through. If you have some kind of special kind of codes in there or whatever that don't go through, they talk with you about how to fix that. So we've got third-party implementation partners that will also do some of that work. With that being said, we wanted to make it real easy for small to medium-sized companies to be able to stand up an environment to quickly check to find that. SAS is a very well-known application, and it's a statistical application that most companies are going to use that to have SAS data sets that they submit to the FDA. Many of you may not know that, but typically when you get all the data back from your clinical trials, it's got to go through SAS data sets, and your data management group or your bioinformatics group are going to be using those SAS data sets to make the argument for why a drug is better than another drug. And our goal is to make sure that we can work with our clients for the best possible way of looking at that. Tell me how is SLC better or not better than SAS, or is it complementary to SAS? How does that work, Kristin?
Yeah, so SLC is a compiler, so it actually does use the SAS programming language, and I think that that's one thing that people don't realize, that there actually is another tool on the market that allows them to use their current programs but switch over to another compiler so that they aren't stuck with one particular way of doing things. And as I mentioned earlier, the most important thing that people are looking at now is the ability to be flexible and go faster and incorporate AI and be able to export to Python or R. And the increasing technologies today and the other platforms that people want to interact with are now capable by moving to this. So that's the driving factor. It's there's a lower cost factor there for using SLC, as well as having that agility and future-proofing technology.
We also work with a company called Domino Data Labs, which has a statistical computing environment. And in that SCE, they've also incorporated SLC at a number of the customers that we work with them. So, when you think about all the different tools that deal with SAS data sets and statistical computing, you can see that there's interaction between a lot of these things because it's all around data. How do we most easily manipulate data and deal with data that's going to be going to the FDA and some of the other regulatory authorities, because they all matter. One of the things that we learned, we were recently at a conference, and actually I should put a plug in for the fact that we're going to be at a conference with Kristin coming up in the first week of June. There's going to be a conference called Pharma that's going to be in Boston, and we'll be at that out in the Seaport at the Omni for Pharma. So we're excited about that. It's the first time that we're going to be in this space for that particular show. So I'm interested to see what the audience will be like for that. And we will be working hand in hand with Siemens there and Triam, which is another third-party implementer of SaaS solution as part of that environment. When I talked to when we were at a recent presentation, one of the things that they talked about, and you talk about flexibility, Kristin, one of the things that they talked about was the fact that there's a shift in personnel that are actually working with some of the SaaS environments. And one of the things that's happening now is a lot of the younger people coming out of the education system, coming out of universities, are coming out with R programming. So R is a big competitor, not necessarily, well, it's a competitor to SaaS. And it's obviously it's free when you're in college. And so all these people learn about R and how to use R. So now they come out. So now you see there's this changing dynamic of people that have been using SaaS for 15 to 20 years, now looking at the possibility of having to transition over to R and be able to do something with R. You got these younger people coming out of school that have R, so they've got a leg up on them. So how do we deal with that? I think one of the neat features is the fact that your compiler will actually now take SAS code and will help to convert that to R and show people how to do a one-for-one comparison between the SAS code and R and in Python as well, correct?
That's absolutely correct. The SLC interface does have incorporation of Copilot. So that allows you to not only help with your coding, but it can actually help prompt you on how you can export to R and Python. And you're right, Keith, the people that are coming out of school are not necessarily going to be learning other things until they get to a company that has particular processes around what it is that they're going to use. So this is a really nice way for people to be able to use what they have in place already, but also make sure that they can take the talent that's coming out of school and put them to work quickly.
Well, it's funny because a lot of times there were objections to people saying, well, we can only use SAS because that's the only thing that's FDA
Yeah.
approved. When that's not the case. Actually, we were talking with one of the companies at this recent conference, and they talked about that they've actually submitted an entire application for a new drug product all in R programming. So even though they've got the SAS data sets, they used R to manipulate the data within those SAS data sets. So the reality is it's just how you output the data that's going to be read by the FDA because they're going to use some of their own tools to look at that. I didn't realize how much, and I don't know if you know this, Kristin, but when your data goes back to the FDA, they don't want to see what you've looked at. You made the argument about your drug product and things like that. What they're going to do is they're going to relook at your data, and they're going to dig down and they're going to have their own analytics against your data. So that's a big part of how they question and look at data from some of these different drug companies. Tell us a little bit more about your approach to some of these companies. I know that you've got, from a Siemens perspective, they deal with a lot of the big companies that are out there. How about the other companies that are out there that may or may not have delved that much into SaaS over the years?
Yep. Yep. There are large companies, using SLC to and submitting to the FDA. But there's also a lot of smaller ones, and we don't discriminate against a company size. We have a very prescriptive process to help companies go through a move like this to make sure that they're comfortable. We work with their plan. We'll lay out what it is that we think they need to start with. And because we have folks like you and Triam, we can offload some of that for them if they need to, but we can also teach them how to do things themselves. So the first thing that we do is have a conversation with people and we tell them what the process looks like and why this is something that they can use instead of their current processes. And we'll make a plan for them. Some people can do this as fast as a couple of weeks, and some people takes longer. It depends on their current footprint. But in the first couple of meetings, we can figure out for them what level of effort is going to be required and what their costs might be so that they can make that determination without having a heavy lift on their internal teams to figuring out what their best next step is.
Excellent. In the life science world, did you know life science before you got into the life science vertical, or was it something you just picked up as part of being a sales professional?
I have worked with life science companies in almost every job I've ever had. That's almost. So I think as I have evolved in my career, I tend to keep floating back to that. Maybe it's a subconscious effort because I've always thought that being close to something that's actually helping the world, right? There's always technology that's helping drug discovery, right? That's the big thing now. That's where I'm focused in helping customers. And so I think it's just naturally happened because I do have experience in the area starting 25 years ago.
So prior to SLC, which you guys have just picked up since this calendar year, that's a 2026 new endeavor for you, correct?
Yeah, SLC is a new endeavor. I did not have any prior experience with SAS language. I knew it existed. I had no idea that there was another product out there. I think a lot of people didn't, but there are hundreds of companies using this today. So this is very exciting to be able to offer this to companies. And every time I talk to somebody, they say, A, they didn't know it. They didn't know Siemens even created software at all, not only acquired and developed software. And we are talking to so many people. They are incoming requests every week to understand, asking us to understand a little bit more about SLC and whether or not it's something that they can use. So that is where I'm spending a lot of my time right now.
Yeah, and I just heard that GSK made a major announcement they're going to be using SLC within them. So GSK is GlaxoSmithKline, for those of you that don't know. We throw around all these acronyms, SLC for
Yeah.
SAS Language Compiler, GSK. You can't tell whether you're talking about a company or a
Yeah.
product or whatever, or a regulatory authority, FDA. The reality is it's just acronym soup sometimes when you're dealing with all these different companies out there. Now, prior to SLC at Siemens, you had worked with some other products. What were the nature of some of those products you were dealing with?
Some of the earlier onset of IoT was a company that I worked for that PTC ended up purchasing, which became the ThingWorx platform. So that was enabling medical devices in hospitals to be connected to the internet so that the original equipment manufacturers could better service them. So that was that was one of my first introductions to that part of the industry because it was mind-boggling to me how much money could be saved for the customers, the hospitals, to make sure that their data that was coming from their machines could get back to the manufacturer. That's for fixing things, that's for auto replenishment of supplies. So there's a direct impact there to how patients and their results could come faster and make sure that there's never any downtime. So I think that that's where I started to truly understand how life science works. And if you're always working with a technology that can help the bottom line of patients, in those companies developing, drugs and devices for patients, that's always going to be a worthwhile time to spend.
Well, it's funny because I think I ran into Siemens in totally different areas, like looking at maybe systems for access into buildings and things
Mhm.
like that. Because I don't know if people know this, but when
Yeah.
you're dealing with a life science company, a lot of time they worry about access, who has access to their drugs, to their IP, to all that stuff. So they're
Mhm.
very secure environments. There's a lot of that, both physical security as well as logical security. That's what I knew them for, and I didn't even realize some of the other things. But yeah, I guess on the med device side and on the big ticket items in hospitals and
Yeah.
some of the healthcare side of things, that they've got a huge footprint. So it was interesting that Altair was one that they had picked up as a software. Now, the old software you were working with as a new name, or did they rename software? Is it a new brand coming out? What's happening with that?
Yep. So some of the other, products that came with the acquisition are becoming embedded into the Siemens agentic enterprise platform. So that is going to be, there's a lot of new information out there, in these last couple of months about what an agentic enterprise is, and it's all folding in together to the same common goal that these companies have, which is they want to do things faster. They want to develop drugs faster. They want to create new medical devices that are going to change the world. And they want to use AI as part of that, but they have to have the governance in place in order to be able to use AI in a fashion that allows them to keep moving rather than have to stop. So I think there's a very large percentage right now of project fails if you look at the stats right now on AI because everyone's trying things out. They want to see what they might be able to do with it, but they don't quite have a handle yet on how they're going to make sure that they can continue with those efforts. So that's all part of the Siemens vision with that purchase of Altair and some of those products that came with it. So it's very, very exciting. There's some new material, I think, on our website as of today.
Oh, that's awesome. You
Yes.
think about agentic AI and so agents that get in there and they do things while you're not really manipulating. They're kind of doing things on their own. But we're also
Yes.
talking about IA, intelligent automation, and I think that people know some of the IoT stuff you're talking about and some of the other products as more of a automation based things and intelligent automation, process control, things like that. So I think that's a huge area, and that's a major area within the life science world, particularly in the manufacturing side of the house, where they need to have that automation to make sure they make the size of the batches they do and the different things that they have. Um, as we're coming up on time here, Kristin, tell me a little bit more about, your final thoughts on the life science world and where you go from here. Do you anticipate getting more products coming in, or is it something that Siemens gets something and they hold it for a while and try to figure out how to build it into a thing, or tell me a little bit more about where things are going to go for you within Siemens.
Yeah, so this has actually been in the works for quite a while. The acquisition happened close to a year ago, and the exciting things that are happening now are the incorporation of AI into all of these products that Siemens had already. And so they've been working on this for quite a while. This was already part of the roadmap, which is how do agents talk to one another? How can the workforce that's interacting with patients, people internally, et cetera, how can they interact with all the automation that we want to do? So it's all about the human workforce and the AI workforce being able to accelerate together in a governed fashion. So that's the focus that usually is part of every single conversation I have, especially with people at the C level. They're like, how are we going to do this so that we can use AI, but be, lower our risk, but still go fast. So that's if I'm anybody in an audience in the industry, I would look at those factors and learn a lot more about it because there's all kinds of AI out there to learn about it, and they can always call me.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I want to thank you very much, Kristen. It's been a great conversation, and I would encourage everybody out there, if you haven't thought about Siemens before, take a look at Siemens and look at some of the tools that they've got out there. I think there's some really interesting things. I didn't know as much about Siemens before this acquisition, so I'm glad to hear some of the other
Yeah.
tools that they have, and I'm sure as we work with SLC and some of the other things, we'll be involved in that. Also, if you are going to be around Boston the first week of June, I'll put a plug in for PharmaSug if you're involved at all in the SaaS world and you want to look and see what's out there and who's there. Come certainly visit us at our booth within PharmaSug and come see and talk to a lot of other people that are dealing with that. It's great to network with your peers and be out there doing some work there. Thank you very much, Kristen. It was great having you. Look forward to meeting you again in a couple
You in
weeks.
a few weeks. Yeah. Thanks, Keith.
Take care, everybody.